In many ways, the objective of ethics is to achieve a degree of certainty about our decision making. What is our objective? Is it the best possible objective? Can we have confidence in it? And therefore, can we afford to devote all of our time and energy towards achieving it? Certainty is a very dangerous state of mind. We are human beings. We are limited in our ability to understand the world around us. The limitations of our senses, the abundance of information, and the many cognitive biases we carry around with us at any given time all make it extremely difficult to be objective about the decisions we make. Thus, certainty can become a very serious problem because we don't have the ability to know the world well enough to be certain about anything. And therefore, if we ever do find ourselves in a state of certainty, total confidence in our decision-making approach, we're almost certainly making a mistake. A particularly devastating example of this is DDT.
DDT. An insect infestation can riddle a crop.
The answer to the quest for a poison to eradicate the insects, it arrived unheralded, but inherent was the power to curb epidemics.
Insect enemies can be controlled by the aerial application of insecticides. Insecticides are poisons. Kill warm bloods and cold bloods alike. Properly used, they will not cause disease nor increase the susceptibility of disease in animal or man. Growers of food crops are required by law to use them within the established residue tolerances. Less dependence upon nature and more control in managing his crop.
The creator subsequently won a Nobel Prize for this in chemistry. And best of all, the product had absolutely no human health impacts. In fact, it had no environmental impacts.
Experiments and inventions are constantly being made to improve DDT formulae and methods of application.
They could breathe this dust in and it caused no harm. This was consistently tested and found to be true. It didn't seem to affect any other animals, just the bugs it was aiming for. While a human could breathe it in and not absorb enough for it to become a problem, the bugs that died from this were eaten by birds.
In 1962, Rachel Carson published her book. The American biologist accused DDT of harming all kinds of creatures. Its persistence threatened the web of life itself.
And by the time it reached humans in the food chain, we were getting very high doses.
It was very disturbing to me to find DDT criticized. I had been rather proud of being in a business where I was doing something that I thought was good for mankind. On balance, there isn't anybody who will argue the fact that DDT has done an enormous amount of good, both in terms of human health and in promotion of agriculture and food and fiber to better the lot of millions of people.
It eventually had to be recalled and is no longer used in any developed countries and is banned in many developing countries as well. This product was phenomenally ethical. It vastly improved the health and well-being of humans worldwide. But because of information he did not have and could not get at the time, it led to a failure of purely catastrophic proportions, the exact opposite of what he wanted to achieve. Now, since then, health and safety testing and product testing and chemistry testing has advanced quite substantially, and we know what to look for. But in many regards, that is only because of prior failures, such as DDT. We now know what a bioaccumulant is and test for it as routine. But what this all illustrates is that there is never going to be a point where we can ever be certain about anything. And therefore, what's the correct move? If you can never have certainty about your process, how do you do anything? Any action you take could lead to a catastrophic outcome, and any inaction you take could also lead to a catastrophic outcome. So what do? We find ourselves in a state of paralysis due to this fundamental uncertainty about life. Well, we do have a process we can follow. We use the best available evidence at any given time. But most importantly, we recognize that that evidence will change with time. That the decision we make in a moment does not happen in a vacuum. That our understanding of the world and the sciences develops over time. That new information may come to light, and therefore it is critical that we are open to those changes in information. Accountability mechanisms, enabling the flow of critical information up to us over time, is essential to this, empowering those that will be affected by our product and any failures that may accidentally emerge to tell us that the problem exists, that it may be managed as proactively as possible, and therefore ensuring not simply that you find out that things have gone wrong, but to ensure that the objective you were aiming for in the first place is in fact achieved. Compare DDT with cigarette companies.
One of the most controversial consumer articles.
DDT, a disaster. An accidental disaster. The objective he went for was sabotaged by his process. And on learning that, steps were taken to remove it from the market. Tragic, but responsible. And therefore, there's very little one can do to criticize the creator of the product. By contrast, cigarette companies found themselves in a very similar situation. There was a time where no one knew that cigarettes were in fact carcinogenic. But by contrast, once that information came to light, those companies reacted in a very distinctly different way. Rather than embracing that reality and taking responsibility for the impact of their products, removing them, or perhaps even substantially redesigning them, instead they sought to suppress that information. And thus, whether they like to admit it or not, became responsible for every instance of cancer that has ever resulted since then. Now, all legal, what one must do is but a minimum standard. Ethics is what one should do.